a boy.
You try it.
Kill him!
So welcome back to Stephen King Saturday. Today we're going to be talking about The Mist, so obviously not going in sequential order because this movie came out in 2007, but this is definitely one of my favorite Stephen King adaptions. And Stephen King himself said that he was very terrified by this adaptation from his book. And the director, Frank Darabont, said this was the happiest moment of his career, which if Stephen King said that to me, I agree. And Frank Darabont is not a stranger to Stephen King adaptations. He did Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. And this film has a lot of ties with The Walking Dead, which is interesting because Frank Darabont, the director of this film, actually works on The Walking Dead, and he has casted a lot of the cast from this film. So if you haven't seen this movie but you love The Walking Dead, you'll definitely see some familiar faces. And Frances Sternhagen, I'm really bad with names, I'm sorry. She is not a stranger to Stephen King movies either. She was actually in Misery, so that kind of ties into my last Stephen King review. Now this movie is set in Maine, but it was actually filmed in Louisiana, but most of Stephen King's stuff is set in Maine, which that makes my life goal to basically go to Maine. And I've heard that you can go to his house, like you could see his house, so I really want to do that. This takes place mostly in a supermarket. It follows one kind of family in particular, a father and son mostly. That all sounded very vague. It's like kind of, but loosely, but not really. Anyway, Stephen King got the inspiration for this book when he was in a market in Maine, and the whole front of the store was a glass window, and he just thought, what would happen if giant insects flew into the glass? Now overall, this movie is fantastic. I love this adaptation. The consistencies of this were amazing. Just everyone who worked on this and all the acting was just so well done, so believable. There wasn't really one person that I was like, okay, I don't believe you. There weren't continuity issues like in most movies. The way that this escalates into one person seeing something and then no one believing them, and then eventually it just escalates into, okay, shit, we gotta do something. I love that there's like a million different species of creatures, and I have to say the scariest ones are the big giant ones that make weird noises. Oh my gosh. Kind of reminds me of Cloverfield, but I cannot put Cloverfield on the same level as The Mist. The backstory to this is that the military basically opened a portal into another dimension, and they allowed creatures to come in on accident. And the director wanted to open with this scene of showing the military opening the dimension and then the creatures and stuff, but he thought it'd be much more scary to leave that out and kind of it be talked about but mostly unknown. And I thought this was a genius idea because it's something that you guys know I love, when you don't get all the info right away and it's not painted out for you, it's not so black and white, and you're left questioning, what is this? Like, why are these aliens? Like, what are these things? They look prehistoric. And the character development of this movie was flawless because you have so many different characters, but you get just enough information about each of them to kind of connect with them or to understand them as a character. And so as things progress, you see different reactions from different people, and I feel like that's so accurate to what would actually happen. And then they also get the survival mode of, well, we need to trust someone, like one person to lead us, and you know, they're willing to kill another person, and that I think is accurate as well of what would actually happen in a crisis. Like if you were stranded on an island, for example, with a bunch of people, you would probably eventually go and do things like that, kind of like Lord of the Flies, you know? There's also little pieces here and there, references to Stephen King, and Stephen King was actually offered a like backup role in the movie but turned it down, which kind of bums me out because sometimes in some of his films, you guys know, he does a little cameo, kind of like Alfred Hitchcock, and I love that. But there were a lot of odes to him, and that was really cool. Like in the beginning of the film when the son is drawing, he's actually drawing a character from Stephen King's Dark Tower series, which is a great series. I haven't read all the books, but I really like the third one. But he's drawing Roland, and I thought that was so cool. It's just like little things here and there. There's someone who's wearing like a radio station t-shirt, and it's a radio station in Maine that Stephen King owns, and it's just little things like that mean so much to the viewer and Stephen King fans, you know? Now if you haven't seen this film, I'm going to talk about the ending because how could I not talk about the ending of this film? So just a heads up, there are going to be some spoilers coming up. I highly recommend turning this off if you haven't seen it yet because you really need to go into it not knowing the ending. This to me is one of the most messed up endings in any movie, and this is the epitome of a Stephen King ending, and I use that phrase a lot. I love a Stephen King ending. People die when they're not afraid to kill off children, and you know, it's just more accurate to the reality of the situation. Basically, there's 5 of them that have left the market, and they're in a car, they're driving, they run out of gas, and they have 4 bullets. The dad decides, I think it's time that we need to kill ourselves because we don't want to be ripped apart by these creatures, whatever they are. That in itself is so sad, but what comes next is just so sad. And I'm really morbid, and when it happened, I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. Basically, he shoots his son, the woman, and the 2 elderly people that are with him in the car, and now he's out of bullets, and we have this moment where we watch him, you know, attempting to kill himself with a gun, even though it's empty. He's just constantly pulling the trigger, and that scene is so heartbreaking. But the cherry on top, a moment later, we see the military start driving past them with all the survivors from the market. They picked him up, and they're gonna survive, and he has to sit there and look at them after he just killed his son. The whole movie stays accurate to something like this. Not that we can predict what would happen if another dimension was opened, but I think if it were to and those creatures came out, I think this is something that would happen. I think one of my favorite scenes also is when they go to the pharmacy and they see the guy's kind of like strung up in a web, right? And he is still alive and he falls down. When he falls, spiders, or no, they're not spiders, they look like spiders, they're little aliens, just pop out of his back and just start crawling everywhere. But that is so gross and disturbing, and they were not afraid to go there. Gore, amazing in this film. Highly recommend it. It's probably one of the best newer Stephen King adaptations that I've seen. Let me know your thoughts down below on The Mist. If that ending was, if you're a fan of the ending, or if you were mad, which is normal to be mad. Like, I think a normal human being would be like, no, that's stupid, why did he do that? But I'm just curious if there's morbid people out there like me. Make sure to follow me on Twitter because I usually post a poll for what you guys want to see next, which technically Pet Sematary won last time, but I wasn't able to rewatch it in time, so I decided to do The Mist because I've seen that recently and multiple times, so. And also leave in the comments what you want the next movie to be, and then whatever gets the most thumbs up, that's what we'll do. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Oh, that's creepy. I'm a fan of that guy. Interesting. His most twisted film yet, guys.